Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming here tonight at the Ice Factory, Ballard Estate for this Season 2, Episode 3 of the Aperitivo Italiano in Mumbai. Thank you very much. If you don't know what the Aperitivo Italiano in Mumbai, let me shortly explain to you what the concept is. We have been launching this format now 1.5 years ago when we decided that we needed a narrative here in Mumbai about the Italian promotion of our main sectors of intervention. And so we have started 2 years ago now with cuisine, and then with design, and then with sustainable fashion, and then with research, and then with music, and then with investments, calling them like a series, Season 1, Episode 1, Season 1, Episode 2, etc. So today, yes, Season 2, Episode 3, and we are tackling today the sector, one of the most crucial sectors of our Italian industry, which is design. And this is why, because we are celebrating all over the world through an initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Italy called the Italian Design Day, which implies that all of our embassies and consulate generals in the world organize simultaneously events connected to the promotion of design. So you might have noticed that behind us in that other hall we have organized an exhibition of incredible pieces of furniture of Italian companies that are based here in Mumbai. So this time, instead of organizing only a talk and a networking session as we usually do with the Aperitivo, we have decided to create a kind of fuorisalone, and whoever knows what the Salone del Mobile is in Milan knows also what the fuorisalone is. Fuorisalone means organizing events all over the town of Milan on the occasion of the Salone del Mobile. We will be discussing about the Salone del Mobile shortly after, but let me just start now by thanking all the partners that have made all this possible, because the organization of what we did is absolutely amazing, and we have organized all of this in only 15 days. So I would like to thank the Italian Cultural Center, the Indo-Italian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Unitalia, and of course Avid Learning, and my good friend Asad Lalji, who is over there, who will be, by the way, closing the panel that will happen just after my talk. So without you guys, this would have not been possible. So I think you deserve a big round of applause. But, of course, all this would have not been possible without the fundamental contribution of all the brands that are here represented today. So I need to thank them one by one, because they have enthusiastically accepted to come on board with us. In just a few days, they have put all of their efforts in order to allow you to have a glimpse of what Italy design is today in the world. So let me thank Edra, Febalcasa, Minotti, Natuzzi, Poltrona Frau, Promemoria, Scarabeo, Terzo Fuoco, Via Bizzuno, and then Fidenza Village and Campari. Campari is the symbol of the aperitivos, and they are always there with us. So thank you guys, it's highly appreciated. So I was telling you that we decided today to do kind of fuorisalone, so we will have 2 days of events that are listed here in the slide just behind me. Just to recap, we will have 4 moments of interaction, of talks, of conferences. And today we will have a very important one about, which is the official talk of the Italian Design Day. And tomorrow we will have other topics that will be focused, such as craftsmanship, such as design with the interaction of 2 very important architects, one from India and one from Italy. And then we will have a very special session which will be managed by my good friend Giuseppe Rao, who's here with us, who came from Italy to tell you more about the history of one of the most iconic brands we have in the history of Italian industry, which is Olivetti. So we are very grateful to him for being here today, and tomorrow morning he will be discussing about this very important topic. So now I would like to touch the issue of the Salone del Mobile. If we organize the International Design Day in March, it is also in order to allow us to promote the Salone del Mobile, which happens in April. So this year is going to be from the 16th to the 21st of April in Milan. And so I would like now to show you a small video about the Salone del Mobile. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Dzień dobry.
안녕하십니까.
Guten Morgen, hallo, buenos días.
Namaste.
Dios cuida, please.
Bon dia!
I hope this video has brought very high your attention towards this very important moment. And I don't know if you ever had the chance of visiting the Salone del Mobile in Milan, but if you haven't done so, please consider doing. And this year we are going to make it even easier for you because we have decided to replicate what we did last year that has had a great success, which is the launching of a fast track for the obtention of visas of whoever want to pay a visit to the Salone del Mobile in Milan for architects, designers, buyers. Last year, through the fast track, we have attracted 5,000 Indian participants to the Salone del Mobile, which is a record for the participation of India in Milan. This year, we want to go even beyond that. So I would like to show you how easy it is. This year, it's even easier than last year to take advantage of the fast track. So we have a little tutorial for you. It's very easy. You have to go to the website of the VFS, and this is what you have to do. It takes 18 seconds to go to the Salone del Mobile in Milan this year. We decided not to put music in order to make it even more dramatic, so it's... And this is it. So, you see? You potentially got your ticket to Milan and to the Salone del Mobile. So now, after this very important presentation of the Salone del Mobile, I would like to start discussing about the panel that we are having tonight. It's a very interesting panel. It's the official panel of the Italian Design Day 2024. The global theme of the Italian Design Day in the world this year is manufacturing value, inclusiveness, innovation, and sustainability. So we have decided to apply this theme to the Indian market and to the Mumbai arena in particular, with a very interesting debate that will happen here in a few minutes about the relationship between culture and design, design and culture. And for that, I am extremely honored to call on stage the participants to this talk, starting by the ambassador of the Italian design, which has been appointed here for Mumbai, Beatrice Leanza. She came here from Italy, and she deserves a great, great, great round of applause. Please come on stage. So she's a cultural strategist, museum director, and critic with a background in Asian studies. She spent many years in China, so she has a very broad knowledge of the Asian market. Thank you so much for being here with us. It's a great pleasure, and we are very proud that you are representing the Italian design in Mumbai today. Grazie mille. After Beatrice Leanza, I would like to call on stage my friend Carl Wadia. I don't know where he is. There he is. Carl is a great architect and designer who heads a team of designers, visualizers, senior technicians, site supervisors, and managers popularly known as Studio Carl. So, I mean, it's one name, one brand. Thank you very much for being here with us, Carl. We really appreciate your presence. Then she spent 25 years at the helm of Highlight Films, nurturing and furthering many successful careers in cinema, fashion, production, and set design. She has curated also many art festivals. Please welcome on stage Srila Chatterjee. And now I am very pleased to welcome on stage the person who will take over the mic from me because he's going to moderate the panel of today. He's a designer, thinker, and conceptualizer for all things creative, provocative, and challenging. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Mr. Amit Gupta. So, dear Amit, I will leave it to you now. Thank you so much for having taken this huge responsibility of moderating this incredible panel of discussion. Having said that, I will close as I always do, telling you thank you very much, grazie mille, bohot, dhanyavad. Grazie.
Thank you, Alexander. I think you are an awesome showman. I mean, how four of us are going to compete with the energy you just put on the stage? Beatrice, is going to be your call. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us today on the celebration of Italian Day. As we speak, Italian Day is being celebrated at various locations in the world. As he mentioned, some of our team members actually in Vienna doing the same thing which we are doing here. It's quite heartening that we've been part of this. Stir, as a media house, has been partner with Salone for many, many years now. We've been curating content, disseminating knowledge about Salone, and not just Salone. We've been media partner with 5 Milan Design Weeks districts, 5 Milan design districts from where various activities happens around the city. That's the mecca of design we all know, and that is what we take pride in being partnering with and making India partner with that and make Italian partner with us. Beyond that, I also want to take this opportunity. It's my first time on the stage here at IFBE. Years ago, Mr. Kamal Malik and Arjun, we sat across the table when this was not even a pencil on a paper, this destination. And today, I'm so happy to see that IFBE has become a very, very strong destination and a dot on the cultural commentary, dialogue, discourses, and presentation. So very proud of what Mr. Malik and Arjun, you have put together for all of us here. Going to what we were talking, so just the little introduction. My name is Amit. I'm founder and editor-in-chief of Stir. Stir is a global media house which cuts across multidiscipline and varied creative disciplines across art, architecture, new media arts, photography, alternative cinema. And we create content. We also curate a lot of initiatives across the world. We have a team of 74 people. Now we can proudly say we have an office in London and in New York, and in New Delhi, and in Mumbai. Today, before I say, there's a 30-second clip on what Stir looks like. For all of you who don't know, may just see it here. Thank you. Manufacturing values. These are 2 keywords which are today going to be talking about, and are also thematic for our dialogue. You know, when you interpret these 2 words, it's important to figure out in the context we're going to be talking about them. Manufacturing, it's not just about a design object. It is the way we inhabit, the way we live. It is the way we build our world around us, and not just for humans, but for other species and other living organisms around us. We're speaking about the concerns regarding not just manufacturing of objects, but production of contemporary culture. And that is one thing which we're going to touch upon today. And when you talk about value, as one another keyword today's thematic, it's a word which is written with loads of ecological, climatic, political, social fabric challenges which we've been facing And how we design, or how do we design a paradigm shift, is what value is around, and what value do we attach to design, and can design value, and can value design. It is one of the value which I love to talk about, a writer called Anne, who says, can we trust design, or can we design trust? And how do we attach values to that? So we're going to talk about these two things, and with me, I'm joined by Beatrice, Srila, and Carl. None of them need too much introduction, but I'm going to just try. Beatrice is a cultural strategist, museum director, and critic with a background in Asian studies, who was based in Beijing for 17 years. She was an executive director of MAT, Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology, Lisbon, creative director of Beijing Design Week, director of MUDEC, Museum of Contemporary Design and Applied Art, Lausanne, co-founded the Global School, the first independent institute for multidisciplinary creative research established in the PRC. She's a member of International Advisory Board of Design Trust Hong Kong, and is a European Young Leader, 2018 President, Friends of Europe Foundation, Brussels. I summarized a huge career in few lines. And I'm going to first invite Beatrice to talk a little about her practice, what she's known for, what she propagates, and then I'm going to invite Srila and Carl to jump in. Beatrice, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Amit. It's great to see you. Thanks again to the Italian Consulate here for having me. So what I'll do is just share with you in less than 10 minutes a few things about what I do. And here you'll see a few images. Probably they won't match with what I'm going to say, but, you know, subliminally they'll stick, I think. So as you said, yes, I've spent a lot of time. I mean, I'm Italian, I'm from Milano, but I spent most of my adult life very far from where I come from. And I did live for 17 years in China and moved through a lot of countries and etc. So I do have a background in Asian studies. I'm in fact an art historian by training. But regardless, I've always had a very strong interest in how creative feats in whatever kind of expression, art, you know, design, architecture, moving images, how they intersected with the manufacturing of space and spatial politics, which is, in a sense, how they help us understand what surrounds us, our relationship, you know, with what is around us, how they alert our senses, and how they modify our rituals to rekindle our identities with constantly transforming notions of collectivity, of community, and thus of way to be together. And this is a topic that has stuck with me a lot in eventually what I, you know, end up doing. My definition of design is quite simple. I think design is both a science and poetics of relations to collaboratively build the world. I find that this notion of world building essentially tells us that design is a way to generate tools and protocols, you know, to live together, to bind us, you know, together to our community, but also to territories and forms of life. So there's one, let's say that, you know, if you talk of design in general, I find you can always find design being a form of world making, regardless of any, you know, historical or geographic context, you know, you're going to look at. But I find that nowadays there is an evident shift in paradigms, in thinking, that moves from, again, constructs or paradigms of globality, of globalism, to an expanded construct of planetarity. And this is in fact a concept that was brought forward in the late 90s by the Indian scholar Gayatri Spivak. And she spoke of planetarity as a concept that was somehow presenting itself as a counterpoint to really the homogenizing, you know, forces of globalization and capitalism. And this shift in thinking, if you apply to design or design nowadays, it becomes really pivotal. Because in this sense, it means that we start seeing design becoming entangled with a lot of phenomena that are eco-political, social, and phenomena that range, let's say, from climate migration to the advent of synthetic intelligence, to, you know, spatial inequality. These are all phenomena that sort of like force design and its systems of production, of distribution, of research, of education to really completely construct new meaning of sustainability, inclusivity, you know, and innovation, which are the three terms that, you know, like are a little bit the focus of this idea of manufacturing value. So you have seen here in the beginning a few images of Beijing, from Beijing, and at the time when I was there, this was the early 2000s, and I have to say that those years, the time that I was there, were pivotal for me because they really ended up informing the way that I think of institutions, of institutional practice, and eventually really kind of informed the way that I have shaped institutions. And I think it's going to be interesting to discuss together today even what institutional practice even is, you know, if we want to think about it beyond the construct of, you know, physical buildings, you know, like physical constructs that are bound to a city, to a territory, you know. And the reason why that time was really important for me is because in the early 2000s, China was entering a very specific period, and it was the moment when it was coming to really play, you know, the position in a global context, right? Becoming a, you know, like a global power. And in that moment of rapid fire development, you know, like what sit at its center was really the construction of cities, of new urban centers, of new urban cultures, but also new ways of producing the future that were really tied to, you know, like new forms of understanding living together in urban context. For many years, I was the creative director of Beijing Design Week, and this was really a major governmental event. It was supported by 3 national ministries, interestingly, culture, education, science, and technology, and it was promoted by the municipality of Beijing. And you have seen some pictures here. What we decided to do with Beijing Design Week, and I think it's interesting to now discuss it also connected to the mother of all Design Week, which is Milan Design Week, right? That was built as a very specific model that had the industry at its center, but also a model that was built around the idea that there's no innovation if there's no really a building of a culture of design around its, you know, like productivity. And what happened there was that we decided to, rather than, let's say, mimicking, you know, global or international models, you know, like existing ones, we really instead put our forces in generating or shaping a platform through which professional, civic constituencies, you know, corporate or public entities could all come together to really shape together a culture of design. And one very distinctive feature of this was that we transformed the idea of a design week really into a long-term platform for the prototyping of design-driven project that had really a social and urban impact. And this is a very unique feature that we're talking 10 years ago. It's a really unique feature that has been picked up a lot, you know, thereafter. And if you think of it also, you know, like these were the times when really China was investing into the idea that by way of designing economic incentives, you could channel them through a form of cultural diplomacy. And these were the years when, you know, like you had therefore the starting of the building of an infrastructure for culture, designs, biennales, triennales, and etc. This is a phenomenon that you see now in the Middle East, in the Gulf region. It's copycat, it's 101, same, you know, same process. I'd be super interested to hear what's going on here because I've been here for a couple of days and I'm starting to see and feel so many features of this, you know, bustling, you know, cultural life that remind me a lot from the back. And I don't want to take too much time, you know, like from our conversation, but what I want to say, and perhaps as a little bit of a provocation for what we're going to say, I carried a lot of these notions, you know, of the idea of really working with multidisciplinarily practices, you know, like and the idea of building platforms through which we could channel innovation and impact-driven, purpose-driven, programming. I carried that into the my work as a director of institutions, of museums, festivals, and et cetera, et cetera. And I find this is an important notion that makes a huge difference, and I'll leave you with that, and perhaps we can pick this up. That I find that in many cases, especially when it comes to museums, so to cultural institutions, we all speak of their future in terms of demographics of scale that come back in return of investment over visibility, over marketing, like numbers, like of visitors, rather than in terms of ecologies of impact, that instead speak of an economics of innovation and social empowerment. And I find that this is a huge qualitative difference that can make or unmake institutions regardless of their scale. I could go on forever, but we don't have that, and I'm more interested to actually start this conversation. So I'll end it here.
No, thank you, Beatrice. And you touched upon very, very important subjects, and also giving parallels to what your practice is all about. We will deep dive into institutional practice, and we will also deep dive into now definition of culture. But before we do that, before we start talking about it, I'm going to invite Srila to talk a little about her practice. And just to tell you, you write about what is happening in Middle East. I just came back from Abu Dhabi. We were part of Abu Dhabi Culture Summit, and how they are imitating West. Abu Dhabi Louvre is already there. Guggenheim is coming there. The Abrahamic Family House is already there. We've got Foster's building a museum. We've got many museums coming up there, many cultural centers coming up there. Yes, Middle East is imitating West in a large scale, and we want to be one up on that. We're going to touch upon that when it comes to Indian context. But over to you, Srila, in terms of your practice, your experience, and your current avatar of 47A.
I'm just going to quickly take you through some photographs to justify why I'm here, because it's a little difficult to explain what I do. I'm one of those people who has many fingers, sometimes slices of pies, and they all come together some way. So this is a little bit of history. I started most of my life I've spent most of my life in a company called Highlight Films, which was started by Mahesh, my husband, but I joined him as a producer. We made advertising films, and I put this here because apart from everything that shaped me in 25 years of running a film company, I was also able to use that for many things. This photograph is from the office when it also became the start of a furniture and design company that I started with a partner, and we called it Highlight Living because it was an experiment. While I was at Highlight, I for 2 years in 2004 and 5, was a director of the Kalaghora Arts Festival. We took huge leaps at that time, and there was a group of 9 incredible people who put together 9 different festivals together. Our idea was to really make it into an Edinburgh. And I think we set it all up for that, but sadly the Kalaghora committee thought that it was too much, too big, and they didn't share our vision. I'm one of the founders of the Blue Frog, and the Blue Frog changed life in Bombay in many ways. Most importantly, I think in terms of design, it had leaps in many ways, and in terms of also using space. I mean, apart from concerts and music, one of the things I particularly did there was use the space in non-music hours in the daytime to curate a lot of very interesting kind of pop-ups, if you want to call them that, but each one was themed. So there was, a pop-up on furniture, on children's things, on design, on clothes, Christmas, stuff like that. So Barrow was the store that I was part of for 4 years in Sunmill Compound in Lower Parel. I have to say I loved it. It was a big store, big space, about 4,000 square feet. And although what we did there was, it started off as primarily a furniture store with all the accessories that went with it, we used the space to do a lot of other things, whether there was music, film, or festivals of all kinds. So this was something that was connected to Bengal. I'm a little bit partial because I come from Calcutta, but this was a festival of a designer who came in and actually transformed the whole store. The next big thing, or the most exciting thing I've been part of is 47A. 47A is a gallery for design that's in Kotachiwari, one of the most beautiful little heritage villages in the heart of Bombay. This house is over 200 years old, and the gallery is on the ground floor. And the design we've showcased ranges from product design, which was Future is Now, one of the first shows we had, to ceramic and glass. This was a fantastic show, working with craft in Kutch, showing where craft could go when you had an intervention with design. Isse Meyake, one of my favorite shows, put together by Ratan, who's sitting there. So it's really a place where there are design conversations of all kinds. I also work with art at Baro Market, and this is a show done by Wolf. Wolf are artists from Jaipur who work with waste and discards, and we've done a lot of work together, and it grows by leaps and bounds every year. I work a lot with art, and we call it affordable art because I feel very strongly about the fact that we've got to break down the barriers that have been created in a country where there's been very little art education or art exposure, except for galleries that most people are intimidated by. So this has been very, very successful. It's contemporary art of all kinds. I hate the divisions between folk and tribal and whatever. It's contemporary art, and there's vintage art as well. And we put caps on it. It's capped at 3 lakhs. It's all certified, and it does incredibly well. We're taking it across the country. We use places like the Vintage Garden, Kumaraswamy Hall, the museum, and all kinds of places in Bombay to showcase things that come from different parts. So here is a bit of something we call the Bengal Bazaar that's been a huge success. And this is another kind of market that brings together small brands, designers who don't have big spaces to showcase, and hugely successful because people are hungry to look at things that they don't just see everywhere else. And the other thing I believe very strongly in is community building. And this is from Kotachiwadi, where our gallery is. And apart from the fact that our gallery is housed there, we work with the community in all kinds of things. This is Christmas at Kotachiwadi, and this is our landlord is one of the singers here. There's a lot we're doing with conservation, trying to keep the area. And for me, all of this kind of gets combined: design, conservation, heritage, art, all of it. So that's what I do.
Thank you, Sheila. You also took me to a nostalgic trip. When I was with McCann and JWT, we used to work with Highlight a lot and create ad movies together. You may not remember my existence. I was just a trainee then. Yeah, but yeah. I used to work for McCann, and we created Horlicks and Boost movies together. Carl, over to you as a space designer, as a person who puts forms to the vision. Just tell us about your practice before we deep dive into the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, thank you to the Italian Consulate for hosting this event. This is the first time I'm having the opportunity to speak here. I must also add that my good friend Arjun, who runs this place, a school friend of mine, and 2 very senior architects from the fraternity, Mr. Kamal Malik and Mr. Bartley Boy. It's nice to be here. So I think design is made by people, and we always try and say that It's the people that when they think together and when they talk and when they interact, some kind of good design comes out. We don't believe that it's a single person's stroke of genius that creates design. And therefore, the first slide talks about all the people that put together the project that I'm going to try and showcase. So when this panel was put together, it automatically came to my mind that might as well demonstrate a project that we've been working on very closely for the last 2 years, and that is the National Maritime Museum of India, which also falls within a much larger context of a National Maritime Heritage Complex. The project is located in a place called Lothal in Gujarat, and when we started to design, we sort of pretty much, you touched upon it some time ago, we didn't want to create a museum that simply educates and simply showcases the art object. We wanted to create a museum which was extremely interactive, a place where you enter large spaces, small spaces. You often have to duck to go from one place to another, and the exhibit or the experience becomes the exhibit. And because this was our first museum that we designed, we were lucky enough, or let's say unfortunate enough, to have zero experience in the space. And I think that's what, in a sense, gave us that ability to look at it in a fresh way. So it's a very large site, 375 acres, and there's a large national highway that actually cuts through the site. So the first thing we wanted to do was eliminate the large vision and the noise and the pollution of the cars. So we created a little green mountain around the national highway, the state highway. We created an interchange and a double level interaction zone where people from the southern end of the site could reach the northern end of the site on foot or in a boat, in the spirit of this being a national maritime museum. The site not only has the museum, but we've also come up with the idea of having a maritime institute, maritime theme parks, and basically somebody can come here for 2-3 days, and the museum is just one day of that itinerary. And of course, to tie it up all together, we had to work with several ministries in the government, be it the shipping ministry, the heritage and culture ministry, and also the PMO's office to try and tie this whole project together. We worked with the Director General Lighthouse, and the place is being designed for a visitor footfall of between 35 to 50,000 people in a day, so at its maximum peak. So of course, all of the other stuff that comes with such a large footfall had to be taken care of. As part of our design exercise, we didn't want to stop at the museum, so we actually tried to create a sort of 3-day itinerary of what people can do of all ages, be it food, be it clothing, be it farming, be it getting educated on how things used to be done. And the importance of the location of Lothal is that just a kilometer away from our site is actually the first dry dock ever found 4,000 years ago. So this, the place of Lothal used to be part of the ocean, where the ships used to come in the high tide. They used to fix the ships, and then they used to release it back into the ocean. And then the ocean receded away, and in a sense, this is one of the first places known 4,000 years ago where humanity went through climate refugees. So it was very important to showcase that event, and that's what you see today in most of Bhuj, in Kutch, where a lot of the ocean receded away, and that land is so saline and salty, and that's why there's no proper plantation, vegetation, all of that. So we had to work with all of these factors and try and make this entire site into not just a museum, but also a place of education. Being architects, we got curious as to what people could wear when they're at the museum, the docents. So we sort of designed, the clothes. We had some ideas on how the app would look. And this thing at the bottom right of your screen was actually a 3-day itinerary for a family that came, say, on a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday, and how they can enjoy this space as a whole. So this was all possible because we were fortunate enough to have a team of 30, 40 people, everybody brainstorming, doing little trips all over the country to try and figure out, what are the different cultures and how people experience museums. So that's a small snippet. The space itself, it's a large museum of 16 galleries, including a children's gallery, a naval gallery, and the entire history of Indian maritime, starting from 2500 BC to the present day modern navy. And you'll be surprised to know that one of the first trade routes, maritime trade routes known in the world, was when from the Gujarat region, they were moving spices to the Mediterranean. And this is exactly where the site lies. So the galleries themselves are full of technology, full of rides, because we want children to enjoy it. We don't want the spaces to be, more of, lecturing and, educating people, but more about fun. And that's basically what the whole galleries look like. There are breakout spaces. So the museum is oriented north and south. So the idea is that when you actually enter the main museum, you go down and you're surrounded by all sides on water. So you're supposed to finish the circuit in about 3 to 4 hours. And there are break spaces. Every 4 to 5 galleries that you see, there's a breakout space. So there's an artisan's court, there's a traditional old kund, and then of course there's a sculpture court. And each of these were designed to be completely unique, to have artisans, food vendors, and all of that be in these courtyards. The final piece of the puzzle is in the evening, by about after sunset or just before, when you come to the center of the museum, where we created this little mini village called the Lothal town. And this is a sort of miniature version of what Lothal could have been 4,000 years ago. So there is no, since the whole of Lothal is completely broken, and there's only footings and 2 feet of brick that you can see, this is more of conjecture as to what the architectural style could be. And when we bring people here in the evening, the idea is to get into the mood. So you have to deposit some money, take Lothal currency. So we found some proof of what the currency used to be like. And then you use that currency to actually buy stuff, eat some food, and spend about 2-3 hours in this space till the evening sets down with a nice Sonia Lumiere show in the center, and this fantastic amphitheater that can host almost 10,000 people in the space. So yeah, that's our journey of the Lothal design. Thank you. And it's under construction, and the first phase should be ready in about a year. And the most important thing that I want to say about this project is that from the government side, we are almost 25 consultants working on this. There must be at least 5,000 people who are brainstorming every day on this project. And everyone's getting in ideas, and the only way that this is happening is because we've been open to all suggestions. And if someone has an idea that's better than ours, we consider it as free advice and take it. So that's been the success of the Lothal project.
Thank you, Carl. I think that will trigger a few questions, and we're going to start a conversation. Institutional practice, museums, cultural institutions, art centers play a very, very strong role in mapping, showcasing, and conserving culture and its narrative. But when we talk about the institution centered around what we call contemporary culture, I don't think we can talk about it without talking about how a public plays an active role in that, and how public programming becomes pivotal to the practice of that museum or to the narrative or responsibility of that museum. Beatrice, there are some burning issues and a lot of topics which are being talked about and questions being asked on. Where is this culture emanating from? And who is represented in these institutions? And whose gauge is that narrative abiding by? You know, I want you to touch upon that. I'm going to jump to you, Srila, on when you talk about in the similar line on 47A as the narrative, and you also talked about accessibility. Yeah.
You know, I pity anyone that does my job. I think it's really like, nowadays, I think that, you know, working with institutions, it's a complicated matter, particularly because we live in a very divisive time, you know. So now, you know, museums, they have to deal with, you know, histories and legacies of you know, like, they range from colonialism to issues of diversity of different kind. So this term, inclusivity, it's becoming a little bit of a, you know, tantamount to anything and everything, you know, like you do. I think that to a certain extent, like I've learned from practice that in order to generate engagement, you always have to think in the plural, in a sense that there's no one public, of course. I mean, this is the most important, you know, notion that anyone running whatever kind of event, and regardless, I find, of its disciplinary subject, you always speaks to publics, you know, in the plural. And in very practical terms, I find that, you know, museum have one big enemy at the moment, which is what I call the industry of edutainment. And this ranges from, you know, online platforms, you know, streaming platforms, to spectacles, you know, like, or whatever other, you know, kind. And I find that institutions really make a difference. Instead, what they try to, rather than manufacturing sort of spectacles of entertainment at the level, and this is a model. I mean, I don't want to bore everyone, you know, like with the ABC of, you know, what generally sticks to the Excel sheet of, you know, like in an institution, but there are some ABCs, of course, there. But something else that is what I was mentioning before, you know, like, is working on the long term of that engagement means to work with your constituents. And I'll give you a very practical example. When I arrived in Mat at the Museum of Art, Architecture and Technology, this was a fairly young institution, but one that was already, you know, had made, you know, an impact. I mean, it's a fantastic museum, you know, designed by a woman architect, designed by Amanda Levitt. She's a celebrated, you know, British architect. Someone calls it like the last of the museum built according, you know, as in the wave of the Bilbao effect. So, you know, the architecture takes over, you know, like the sort of reputational power, which also becomes, of course, a problem then. And when I arrived there, I realized that while the museum had a sort of like, had a place, it didn't have really roots, you know, like in the community. And so the first thing we did was I ignited a program that was called Mat Mode, prototyping the museum. And all we did was for like 5 months basically run a deluge of programming in collaboration with a variety of, you know, from curators to practitioners to other institutions globally, all throughout the pandemic, because then at some point then we were hit by the pandemic. But the most interesting thing was that in order to trigger that, and so to trigger that as a form of participation for the local public, because they are your first, you know, constituency, you know, like this is the first you need to speak to, we kind of, in collaboration with So Ill, which is a New York-based architecture practice, they're very well known and they've done a lot of museums, we basically turned the museum into sort of citadel. And the most iconic thing of this architecture intervention was that we pierced a clandestine door through the back of the museum. So basically people could kind of go in and out through places, you know, like that were inaccessible, you know, like to them before. And it's well, not so metaphorical, you know, gesture that though speaks to the idea of how you always need to generate engagement, I find, with the most difficult time to inhabit, which is the present. And so this gesture, like, actually, invoked somehow a literal inhabitation of the space that was different from what they were used to, and etc. There were some pictures of that in my, in my slides before. And I think that this is key, in a way, like, to move away from the idea that an institution is something that is fixed in time or fixed in its own building. I'm sure you had to deal with that notion to a certain extent, thinking not now, but thinking in 20 years, in 30 years, how is that going to be utilized? How people are going to be appropriating it? So this notion of transformation is important.
Which is where I'm going to probe you a bit more. I mean, when we talk about today's world, when we talk about contemporary culture today, one is involving people and inviting public. What all initiatives does a museum or you have been doing in your practice, which actually beyond just involving them, there's an exchange of ideas. How is the programming making public exchange ideas with the curators or with what the museum narrative could be?
Well, I mean, I think that there's, first of all, expectations about, like, what do you expect to do in a museum, no? I mean, like that, generally you have a very passive relationship anyway with the space of a museum, no? You think that you're providing knowledge and you come in, you consume that, but it's an extremely passive relationship. So, and don't forget that, I mean, the idea of collaborating or coming together, it's not so, I mean, it responds to a very simple need that even the professionals have. I mean, institutions are public facing, but they're facing also like publics like professionals, no? So this idea of, the need to create a space for them, it's also very important. And producing that knowledge is something that normally or prototypically, museum or institutions were not defined, like to address, which is a paradigmatic change. But also it's really impactful for your, operating budget. I mean, an exhibition provides you an immediate return on investment. If you want to impact, if you want to work with public, sure, you can work around exhibitions, but that's a kind of like a fixed parkour, no? I mean, so if you start appropriating different models, I don't know, we have done collaborations where we were really basically taking our knowledge networks out into the community. So we were like co-producing, interventions in urban districts, so we weren't even taking the action into our own house. We were taking it out.
Yep.
So.
True. I mean, it's also no more about footfalls and ticket sales and dwell time and then those passive feedback forms. In your context, Srila, especially when you say accessible design gallery and accessible space or space for all, where does the exchange begins and how does the exchange gets propelled further by more and more community coming in and saying, this is the narrative we want to know or hear or tell?
I think the first thing is to really make a place feel like it's accessible. I mean, you feel like you can open that door and you can go in. I think the biggest change in art in India was really the Kochi Biennale. Suddenly art became something that belonged to everyone. I mean, when you go into Cochin, you have everybody from every rickshaw driver and every fisherman believing that it's theirs. And I think it's the first time in India you see art being something that isn't the purview of 100 families who are collectors. What is this notion of collection? And so when we started 47A, the first thing was that it was in a little village in a community. And you didn't want to have that community feel antagonized. So we got them involved in whatever way we could, including having part of what they did as part of the design we were presenting in some shows. Obviously, it can't be every show, but there have been focuses on the design of the village itself, on photography that's come from there. We even do things like, little catering that comes from there, or walks that go around there. I think you also tread a very fine line where you don't want to make it into a gentrified place. You make it, it's their life, and you want to be part of it, and you want them to be part there also, and it doesn't have to be everything that everybody wants, but if everybody feels that they have a place somewhere, I think that's successful. I also feel that the most important thing is to not to go into a place saying, I know about design and I know about art. You don't. I feel that that's really the mistake that a lot of institutions in India for sure have made. And that's slowly changing. In Bombay, you see that from things like the art, the big start things, all very, and there's incredible work that's being done in the museum in Kala Ghoda and in the Bhaudaji Lad Museum, which makes people feel like I really want to go there and there's stuff I can see.
No, you're very right. It's no more one way it's a dialogue now. It's not just that I'm going to deliver what I intend to present. That imitation, as you talked about, even in West, which Middle East is trying to do, they've also now started considering that we need to bring a two-way dialogue rather than a narrative, and this is our history and this is what we want to tell. Carl, coming to you, when you're talking, when you have two professionals who are talking about, are you looking to spatial design, you're looking at interface design, how much of a role you have to play working with the curators or the storytellers of the museum, or what museum needs to stand for, where the engagement turns into exchange of ideas, where the role you play is that public becomes part of the story rather than just the audience?
So like I said, it's a complete formula of participation. And when you think you start designing a museum with some kind of brief, you realize very quickly, if you're ready to listen, that you may not be on the right path. And typically, I think you alluded to it, museums want to be architectural, wonder objects, but it's really not that. I think the museum wants to be a place where every participant in some way wants to express themselves in that place. And by being open to complete participation, be it from the curatorial team to the, so for example, we first prepared an interpretive plan for the museum. We then worked through, the different ministries gave us tens of thousands of art objects and collectibles that had to be sorted. So we got professionals to sort those. We then figured out what needs to be replicated. We also had the opportunity of working with about 30 museums in the country to see what can be borrowed, either for use or for replication. And in that whole slow burning journey, you realize that you have to completely let go of the control. And the museum will sort of find its way to its final manifestation. If you try and control it, it's not going to happen.
True. I mean, I'm also going back, we're still struggling. In India, one of the biggest struggle we have, and you would relate to it, Richard, we don't have a space, or we don't have a museum where a family who may not be an art lover, or who may not be an art collector, would go and spend an hour together and get involved or immersed into the story. And today's generation especially are looking at much more interactive format of looking at history, a much more interactive format of looking at today and tomorrow. That brings us, I mean, I know time is short and I'll be getting a little cues from there. That brings us to the second part of it, what we talked about, values. How do we define values? And whose values are we talking about? Given the times we are in, with so much of social fabric and political dialogues all over, with ecology and climate hovering on us, with technology being bending our thinking processes, how do we define values? And it's up to all three of you to just put a little statement on what values do we define, and what is the whole paradigm shift of definition of values is changing or not?
I just want to say that I don't think that there is a definition of values, and that is the problem in everything in the world. So whose values decide what an institution takes is really the person who's spending the money. I mean, so if you have, you can say what you want, but in the end, the buck stops with X, and X decides what the values are, and you're lucky if those values are what you believe in or what you share. And definitely, I mean, I can speak for myself in what we're doing. We're fighting a lot of the values that are around us politically, that are around us institutionally, in every way. But if you believe that, you fight it. So in a bigger thing, in a big museum, whose values are you presenting? I mean, it's a question, I think, that's universal. How do you decide one is right and the other's wrong? I mean, are we going to be guided only by the capitalist values that have taken over the world and leave other people out? Are we going to be, taken over by the values of a political party? I think that's up to you to decide. And very often, if you believe very strongly in something, the only way you can keep that going is by keeping it small, where somebody bigger can't take it over and then shove their values down your throat.
What would you say to that?
Complicated and a very difficult question, because I don't find any way to respond to the question without speaking to politics. I find that the best tools we have nowadays as a community of humans is to practice democratic values. I mean, we don't have other paradigms through which we can better perhaps exercise or rehearse a sense of respect, of mutuality, of reciprocity, of care. That's perhaps the only common syntax that we have. And I slightly disagree with you in the idea that, values are of those that put the money into it. Well, I mean, in my professional experience, I have worked with very large entities, like massive, like politically charged, patrons, let's say. But I have also run a museum that was owned by a corporation, so completely, a multinational, so completely private. And I have to say that as I struggled through, finding the way to build that language, I believe that regardless of your backing, if you are opening doors to a form of public, consumption, then you do have the responsibility to patrol the lines, of that perimeter, very tightly. And no, not everything goes. So I mean, and this is what I think becomes very important. For example, in terms of representation, is not so much even in the programming, but it's, for example, in the governance of entities, of institutions. It's like, who gets to sit at that table, no? I mean, there are new paradigms now. For example, now there is, I don't know if you have heard of this, now there is this idea, this construct that is called the ZOP. So it's the idea, that within a certain kind of self-governing, organization, self-governed, organization, you start including entities that are other than human, and so that you can somehow legislate, according to, values that plays out, a sense of respect, for other than human life. That's where we are going.
So let me get the audience in. One word. What values you would like to see in the future, which could be inclusive, plural, sustainable? Throw the words. Transformational architecture.
Hi, so one of the Pritzker Award winner, when he was talking about his own childhood memory of what inspired him, if you look at all these temples of Japan. The roof has got a nice curve, and that's what inspired him as a kid. India is so enriched with so much of tradition and culture. So the breakthrough architecture, if you go to any city, you only see plain buildings. But if you have the history of each city, if those can be depicted in terms of architecture, then each city would give you a very rich resource of Indian history and culture fused together. So I would love to enter a city and know by its buildings that this is this part of our country. Or at least a few for sure.
Sure, thank you. One word, values for future. Respect. Honest. Better execution. Oh, sorry. Better execution. Inclusive. Quality. There you are. Great. I think I'm getting feelers to cut the call. I think it was a great conversation. Any questions audience have before I invite Asa to round this up for us?
It's more a question for Beatrice, if I call you by your name. I don't know. You say you were the director at the Met Museum, and among all the pictures that you showed, there wasn't a picture of the front of the Met Museum, which I believe that is kind of the essence of the museum in terms of that is the public space. Because and the question is how important is in a museum and how the art is fruited, how the art is experienced, how important is the ability of a museum to create and to be a public space. Because Amanda Leavitt, she did other projects, like for example the one in London for the Natural History Museum, in front of the Natural History Museum. BNA, correct. Same concept, opening up the road to the public. So that is, I think, is one of the essence of a museum in an era where art can be seen also as a public features, a public things that people need to experience. So the question is, how important was when you were a curator at the Met, the architecture that was giving you so much freedom?
I love that question because I have a fantastic story about it. So if you
used to work for Amanda Leavitt.
all right, so you okay, well then you play an advantage. Then you know what the museum used to be like. You can't see, and I invite you all to visit, please. It's a fantastic, building, but it's also prototypically the building that doesn't have one straight wall. Like it's literally everything is curved or wobbly, and essentially useless for 2D art to a certain extent. Like Maxi in Rome, like the Guggenheim and etc. It belongs to that genealogy of spaces. But I have to say that when I arrived, my predecessor, the director, so before me, had exactly tried to correct that problem by instead, I call it like the MoMA-esking, like making it MoMA. So basically, a block, squared volumes, to create wall space. So the first thing I did when I arrived was to demolish everything. So I'm bringing back the museum to its original design, which is basically just one beautiful open space where you can swap, and turn and there is one, for me that was very important because it actually helped me build the program the way I did, which was constantly transformational. So the point was always to challenge anyone coming to do exhibitions, from the designers to the participants, graphic, creators and etc., to never fight the building. It was always what I told them, like, don't fight the building, go with it. And beautiful things happened. So, every time it was a way for people also physically to be in there differently. So, but thanks for the question.
Thank you.
No, but the entrance was terrible. So the entrance was terrible. It's like always, No, also considering it's on a river, and like you here in Mumbai, you know very well what it means to be by water. You live with wind constantly. So the roof collapsed. Yes. So that was, that didn't come out really well. But the inside, fantastic.
I want to say something.
Yes.
So there are a lot
So
of
never fight the building.
Yeah, exactly. So there are many architects in the room, and I just want to tell you, we have a lot of FOMO. FOMO. So we don't want to create buildings for art. We want the building to be the art. And that's the problem.
Yeah. Let's close it on that. Asad, over to you. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. After that energetic introduction by Consul General Dimasi and the stellar panel, I have the difficult job of coming between you and Campari. So I'm going to keep this really, really quick. On behalf of Avid Learning, thank you to our panelists for this very exciting discussion. Beatrice, Srila, Carl, and obviously Amit for so skillfully moderating this discussion. Our diverse panel has taken us down on a remarkable journey looking at art, architecture, design, curation, looking at museums and other spaces, which is of personal interest to me. We're delighted to be part of Italian Design Days 2024, and I'd like to personally thank the Consulate General of Italy in Mumbai, Alessandro Dimasi, Luigi Cascone, and the Italian Cultural Center, Francesca Amadoli, Francesca, for inviting us in. This is probably the 15th or the 16th collaboration Avid has done with them, to many more. And it's always wonderful to be back at IFBE. I wish they invite us more back often. So, Mr. Malik. And I just want to give a special shout out to my friend who's known as the smiling diplomat, Consul General Dimasi. For his vision for encouraging these collaborations between India and Italy. And he's done many. We've done about 5 programs during his tenure. And he's set a path which we hope will continue for many, many years to come. And thank you to our audiences for being here in such large numbers. We had an overwhelming response, so we couldn't get everyone to come in. So many are actually joining us online in the live stream. I think now all that's left is for you to join the aperitivo and continue the conversation with our panelists who will be there. Thank you for being here and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, guys.